Here's the Friday short for August 1st of 2025. Forgive my voice. I just returned from a 2-week overseas trip with my family, and I caught a nasty double ear infection because apparently my body said, I'll break down on you while you're having fun. And also forgive me for this one being an elongated Friday short, but I've got lots to say as I have to devote another Friday short talking about Michigan's freshman Democratic United States Senator Elissa Slotkin. Now, in my last episode a couple of weeks ago, I posted a Left of Lansing poll in which I asked for your reaction on how you felt after Senator Slotkin made a surprising statement denouncing the right-wing Benjamin Netanyahu Israeli government's actions in Gaza. 2 weeks ago, Slotkin issued a statement criticizing Israel's lack of care or failure of getting food and supplies to Palestinians in Gaza, and how settlers in the West Bank continued inflicting further violence on Palestinians, including the death of a Palestinian American. 5 Palestinian Americans, by the way, have been killed in the West Bank by either Israeli forces or settlers who should otherwise be called terrorists. Now, Slotkin essentially said in that statement that Netanyahu's refusal to hold anyone accountable for its treatment of Palestinians in Gaza is a tacit approval of his government's actions. And as I said in my last episode, okay, Senator, but what took you so long to reach a conclusion everyone else reached long ago? So that's why I asked all of you for your reaction to Slotkin's statement, and 52% of you said you'd like to wait to hear more from her, with 28% of you saying too little, too late. The rest of you viewed her statement as very promising. So not surprisingly to me, a strong majority felt either guarded or simply just dismissed her recent turn on Israel. Now fast forward to when I was returning to the States earlier this week, and Senator Slotkin made an interesting appearance on the independent podcast called Breaking Points with Sagar and Genti and Crystal Ball. I called it interesting because the hosts have been hammering the United States' involvement in Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people, and they've been brutal on both Biden and Trump. So I suppose you can give Slotkin and her people some credit for going on a show in which she would receive hard questions. But in watching the entire interview, which I will provide links so that way you can watch it for yourself, I'm still lost on what's going on inside the Slotkin camp. For example, Breaking Point's host Crystal Ball pushed Slotkin on Israel after Slotkin declared that outside of Detroit, Gaza is not in the top 40 of Michigan voters' concerns. Now, Ball responded by saying it's not so much a political issue as it is a moral issue, and she's right. Just this week, Gallup reported that only 8% of Democrats support Israel's genocide in Gaza. Gallup actually worded it as Israel's military action in Gaza. Only 32% of Americans approve of Israel, while not surprisingly, 71% of MAGA Republicans support the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people. Crystal Ball reminded her viewers of Slotkin's history of voting for Israel, in favor of Israel when it came to weapons, and Slotkin issuing her support for sanctions against the International Criminal Court for indicting Netanyahu, even though Slotkin now says he is a war criminal. And Ms. Ball also called out Slotkin's acceptance of PAC money from the Israeli lobby called AIPAC, a lobby that Slotkin refused to say should be classified as a foreign lobby. Now, Slotkin said she was not endorsed by AIPAC and that she was open to Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders' resolution to block aid to Israel as it commits its crimes against humanity in Gaza. But when that resolution came to the vote on the Senate floor this week, Senator Slotkin was AWOL, choosing to appear on Stephen Colbert's Late Show on CBS. The resolution was voted down by the Republican-held Senate, of course, but for the first time, a majority of Democrats voted to block funding, including Michigan's other Democratic Senator, Gary Peters. Good job. Now, Slotkin issued yet another statement after that vote saying, had I made it back for the vote yesterday, I would have voted yes to block offensive weapons to Israel based on my concerns over lack of food and medicine getting to civilians in Gaza. But everyone, she was conveniently gone. She was conveniently absent to voice her vote on an issue where the Democratic Party base has spoken, and so have so many independents as well. So like Crystal Ball told Slotkin, this is a moral choice. And Slotkin was AWOL. Back in the early to mid-1980s, the AIDS epidemic wasn't in the top 40 of many Americans' minds, but we now know how the Reagan administration failed to address that moral issue until it became a national issue. And this is a national, it is a worldwide issue. Senator Slotkin serves millions of Michiganders. And here's the thing, some of them are Palestinian Americans, as we well know in Michigan. And some of them are Jewish Americans who are also appalled with Israel's actions. Slotkin failed in her newfound moral clarity moment by failing to show up in order to do a TV interview. Just as she refuses to call Israel's actions a genocide, she fails to meet the moment. Even more interesting in that Breaking Points interview, Slotkin didn't seem real enthused to discuss dear leader Trump's ties to Jeffrey Epstein for some reason, nor did she really seem enthused to find out if Epstein had ties to Israeli intelligence. And that, to me, just shows a dereliction of duty as an opposition party member to an authoritarian regime. Now, Slotkin and her people must be realizing how they must change their tune, at least, I guess, performatively, because it wasn't long ago that she lectured Michiganders how progressive economic policies were the wrong way to go, that you can't just be yelling like AOC does, and that fighting for incremental change is always better than fighting for bold change, and that we shouldn't even use the word oligarchy. Not to mention how she also voted to stab Michiganders in the back as the only Democrat to vote for the Trump regime's elimination of California's car emission standards. But suddenly, Slotkin's made some interesting announcements, like calling for a ban on ICE agents wearing hoodies and masks and calling for an act banning corporate PACs. I think someone's got the senator's ear and persuading her to take some out of the ordinary announcements and take some out of the ordinary positions for her. And here's the thing, if she would have made those kinds of proposals during the election last year, like banning corporate PACs, that would have helped her beat Florida Mike Rogers by a wide margin last year, rather than her sounding like Trump and promising to crack down on immigrants. By the way, Michigan's unemployment rate continues to rise and our economy is hurting. Maybe terrorizing and kidnapping undocumented people in Michigan wasn't the best economic strategy. Had she taken some bold positions in that election, Slotkin would not have eked out a victory against a horrible, horrible candidate. I'm just clearly confused right now as to what Slotkin's strategy is. It's like she and her people are reading the tea leaves and are recognizing how out of touch she is appearing with Democratic and independent voters on a number of issues, and so they're trying to make her sound a bit more progressive. But her actions and her lack of action, as we saw this week, shows to me that Slotkin's failing in her position as senator to make the right call on moral issues. That's not leadership. That's cowardice. leftoflansing@gmail.com is the best way to reach me. Follow me on Blue Sky, Facebook, the Gram, and Twitter. Subscribe to the show on the YouTube and subscribe and give a good 5-star review of Michigan's premier progressive podcast. Go Tigers and take the battle to them.